Welcome to In the Spotlight. I'm Abigail Pogrebin. Since 2011, Ronald Leopold has served as executive director of the Anne Frank House, one of the most visited museums in Europe. In January 2025, Ronald brought the Anne Frank House to New York City with a full-scale recreation of the annex rooms where Anne Frank and her family and four other Jews hid for 2 years. Anne Frank, the exhibition, is on display at the Center for Jewish History, and due to its enormous popularity, the exhibit has been extended through the end of October from the original closing date of April 2025. Please do not miss it. It is extraordinary. Ronald lives in Amsterdam and he lectures around the world on behalf of the Anne Frank House, which he calls the world's most famous empty space, haunted by the family that once lived there. So welcome to the broadcast, Ronald. It's great to be with you.
Thank you for having me.
So it's obviously not intuitive to be able to move essentially something that is so kind of organic to where it is, the Anne Frank House, from Amsterdam, its original home, to New York. What was the thinking there? What was the concept? Who came up with the idea and why now?
Well, first of all, we are very much aware that many people would like to visit the Anne Frank House, but don't have the opportunity to do so. They are not able to travel to Amsterdam in the first place, but even if they travel to Amsterdam, it's really hard to get tickets for the museum. We are most of the time sold out. So we have to
tell us how many visitors on average. I know the numbers are staggering.
So we have 1.2 million visitors every year. So it's anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 a day, with opening hours between 9 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock in the evening for all year round. The only day that we are closed is on Yom Kippur. So it's a huge audience that can visit the Anne Frank House, but we know that we have to disappoint many others who are not able to get tickets or to come to Amsterdam, which is really something that hammered home during the pandemic when basically no one could travel, and that we were thinking of what could we offer to those people who would like to engage in the story of Anne, who would like to visit, and what can we offer them in order to give them some kind of experience in this respect. It's also for us kind of a opportunity to expand the reach of our work and to expand the reach of people who would like to learn from the story of Anne Frank. So for us, as being a museum, but also as being an educational organization, it was something that Anne's father, the sole survivor of the family, the sole survivor of the 8 people in hiding, felt very strongly about. It should be also an educational journey, engaging with the diary of his daughter and visiting this place. So what we actually thought about bringing this to audiences abroad was something that basically was very important to us, both from the point of view of the visitor's experience and from our educational mission.
And it has to be said, it's extraordinary. It's shattering. It is beautifully done. I was just lucky enough to get an early tour. But for people who may have been or think they know the attic, it's really different from the Amsterdam experience. And can you tell us how?
I think when we started to develop the concept of the exhibition that we're now presenting in New York, and that has been extended until February next year, it was really thinking about giving people the kind of experience that would just be as emotional as it is when you visit the Anne Frank House, but in a very different way. And I think when you come to Amsterdam, you will see that this house is basically empty. It was her father who, when he was engaged in the opening of the house in 1960, that he instructed the foundation, it should remain empty. This is how I found the place when I returned from Auschwitz in June 1945, when the house had been emptied by Nazis immediately after the arrest. He came back to a city that had lost 70,000 of its inhabitants for the single reason that they were Jewish. And he came back as the only survivor of his family with a huge gap in his heart. So emptiness.
Before you go on, I just love the quote that I've seen you give, that it's a place about absence.
It is very much a place about absence. It is very much to be aware of the fact that Anne and so many others are not among us anymore, and for a reason. So I think that when you compare that to the New York exhibition, where we have a focus on, first of all, offering more context, because what we know is people are still very much interested in the story, fortunately. But at the same time, they know less and less about it. So we're offering a lot of context. We're putting the recreation of the hiding place as a centerpiece in a much larger exhibition that is really about the family's history, a family that had lived in Frankfurt am Main, Germany for centuries, and then had to find refuge in the Netherlands in 1933. And it's really that story, and then their time in the Netherlands, the time when Nazi Germany occupied the Netherlands, the time in hiding, of course, the time in the camps, but also part of the exhibition is the legacy of the diary, the legacy of this house, the legacy of Anne Frank, that has played such an important role also in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, when this world was healing from the tragedies of the Holocaust and the Second World War.
It's really the preamble to the attic is so important in this exhibition, and part of it is that you see the walls closing in terms of Jewish life, that forces the Franks to leave Germany, and then also just their desperate attempts to try to get out. Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, what we try to do with the exhibition is very much also to tell the story, the larger history of the Holocaust through a very personal lens, through what happened to this family, what happened to Anne. And for example, the decision to furnish the recreated hiding place in New York, but also to bring more than 100 collection items from the house, some of them never shown before, some of them never shown before in the US. That brings you very much to an intimate and very personal connection to the story. And I think that is exactly what we've seen. We've done visitor surveys on a scale from 1 to 10, visitors on general rated 9.6, so with a wonderful score and with an emotional impact that we haven't seen much before, to be very honest. And I think that's exactly what this exhibition tries to do, to be emotionally very impactful in order to make people remember her fate and the fate of 1.5 million Jewish children that were murdered for that single reason that they were Jewish.
It's amazing how, sorry to interrupt you, but we know that numbers like 6 million are so unfathomable, and that she, in a way, humanized the Shoah in a way that no one else did. But there's also been controversy about almost mythologizing her too much, not making her a real young girl with all of the complexities, with all of the anxieties, with all of her thoughts and worries and desires. Can you just address sort of the not making her kind of iconic or almost angelic, but making her real?
What we see in the times during the 1950s and 1960s, when her legacy became bigger and bigger and bigger, then in a way, Anne Frank, the little girl, started to disappear behind this iconization. And I think it's incredibly important to humanize her, also to show the Anne Frank not just as a victim, but also as the teenage girl. And I think one of the most, to me, one of the most emotional items that we also have in the exhibition is the invitation that she wrote for a film screening, 1942, anti-Jewish regulations in place. You can go to the movies. And her father rented a film screening at home. and she invited her girlfriends to a film screening. And it's in a way what teenage girls do, what kids do. They have a party, they're organizing something at home, but at the same time, through that little card that she sends to her girlfriend, please come on Sunday afternoon to this film screening. You also get a story. But why did they have to do it at home? Why couldn't they go to the movies? Why was that? So it brings history through the lens of the little girl, young girl who was a kid who was already suffering from the anti-Jewish regulations here in Amsterdam. So combining this very personal element to the larger history is something that we found very important in conceptualizing this exhibition.
And you said, Ronald, I really caught the line because I think it's extremely indicative of where we are, that they know less and less about this story. Even though it's a story that they remember, they know less and less about it. And you've seen, I don't have to tell you all the data on how this younger generation knows so little about the Holocaust at all, about Auschwitz at all, about really any of the history in a way that is not just shocking, but frightening when we think about the future. So when you think about the Anne Frank House as being, in a way, a bulwark against ignorance, can you address that?
So her father, when he was engaged in the opening of the house, he was immediately. So what he instructed the foundation to do was not just be a place of memory, be a place of reflection and learning as well. And this is what the mission has always been since its opening in 1960 and still is. And if I tell you that we are engaging hundreds of thousands of young people every year in 500, 600 projects across 30, 40 countries, telling Anne's story, telling why it's important for their own lives, is something that we feel very strongly about, because this is the heart of the mission of the Anne Frank House, the heart of the mission of her father. And when we present this exhibition in New York, it was for us very important to make it free, accessible for school groups from public schools in the New York City area, just like it's free accessible for school groups from schools that receive Title I funding. So we have an educational programming around the exhibition for school groups. We are soon announcing a state-of-the-art curriculum in fighting anti-Semitism. So the educational part of the exhibition and around the exhibition, also for those who are not able to come to visit the exhibition, is for us crucial, given the fact the mission that her father gave the foundation, and that is so very dear to us and so very important. But let me also say a happy note in this respect. The interest of young people in the story is huge and is rather increasing than decreasing, and from all backgrounds and from all walks of life. So there is, in a way, we're also very fortunate that this little girl, 80 years after her tragic death, still speaks so strongly to her peers, to this generation of her age.
So powerful. And I'm going to ask you, because I know you've handled this question before, and it's out there, which is the danger of universalizing this story, of making her a warning for any massacre, for any genocide, for comparing it to whether it's the Rwandan genocide or Bosnia. How there's also a value that many Holocaust survivors have said of it being essentially a story that tells us we have to be alert to the forces that could have anything like this again. Can you just address whether you think that danger has happened, whether Anne has been used in that way, in a sense that is dangerous in terms of the Jewish story and protecting or uplifting the reality and the fact that she was a Jew, she was killed because she was Jewish?
Right. So we always say that the backbone of the mission of the Anne Frank House is to remember Anne Frank, what happened to her and what happened to so many others and why it happened to her. As the first step in the engagement of the story of Anne, the second step to reflect on why it happened, what it tells us about ourselves, about us human beings, what we are capable of, the choices we make in our lives, huge consequences for our own lives, but surely also for others. And then to respond to that from their responsibility as being a citizen in their own communities in order to make sure it will never happen again. The exhibition ends on a beautiful note, on a beautiful letter that her father sent to kids in the Bronx, who he was corresponding with, and who exactly gave the same wording to this backbone of our mission and to the mission itself. And I think it's incredibly important to see, first of all, not to forget about where this history originated. It originated in centuries-old anti-Semitism, building up to the greatest tragedy that mankind has ever witnessed, and where Anne was and so many others were victim of. I think one of the visitors of the exhibition left a note at the end describing her experience, and she said, exhibitions are critical to remind us of our humanity. And I think that's very much also what this exhibition is doing, and very much also what Otto Frank had in mind when he shaped that legacy in the 1950s, mainly in the US, by the way, because here in my own country, here in the Netherlands, they tended to forget about it. They wanted to forget about it. You know, they were focusing on the future. The house was almost demolished. So in the 1950s.
It's incredible.
Yes. So when Otto and dignitaries from the municipality of Amsterdam then finally managed to save the house, it was also very much for Otto, it was also very much a part of the Tikkun Olam, of a world that is healing from what had happened, and of a father who was at the same time in the process of healing of his huge personal loss. So the mission of of Anne's father is very much connected to his personal loss and the way he thought he should take responsibility for her diary and for a legacy that finally ended up here, sitting here near the Anne Frank house, with 1.2 million visitors every year coming to this place. It is so incredibly moving.
So I want to ask about how moving that is for you personally, because you've been in this work for a long time. I think just even as an outsider walking into a place in New York, it happens to be so close to me, and seeing just how it's resonating with people, how there was already so much demand to go that you had to extend and then extend and extend again. So in addition to the gratification of that, what has the arc of this journey been like for you?
I can't describe to you what a huge honor, but also what a huge responsibility this is. You know, my office is right above the entrance of the museum. I see people coming day in, day out. Just one anecdote: last week, in the bench in front of the entrance, a man with a kippah in conversation with two girls with a headscarf. I was moved to tears to see that. And I think this is exactly the power of Anne. She has the ability, her words have the ability to bring people together, to encourage them to think about their humanity, and to inspire them to do everything they can, everything we can, to make the right choices in our lives in order to make sure this will never happen again. I think Anne's words, this world needs Anne's words in order to better understand its challenges. And I think that is also true for each and every individual that in one way or another engages with her story.
So before we say goodbye, I want to make sure everyone knows where they can see it, how they can see it. If they want to travel to New York, it is worth the trip. Can you just give some of the details, and we'll also put it up on the screen?
So the exhibition is being presented at the Center for Jewish History at the heart of Manhattan, Union Square area. And all the information about ticketing and everything else is on our website, annefrankexhibit.org. And in fall, we are providing free access on several days for first responders, for hometown heroes, for families up to 2 adults, and for children. So on Columbus Day, Election Day, Veterans Day, please make sure you will be able to visit this wonderful exhibition at the Center for Jewish History.
And finally, my last question, Ronald, is just what's your dream for what someone, maybe someone who's 13 years old and maybe someone who's 85 walks out of this exhibition feeling, thinking about, taking with them?
What we hope that this exhibition will do to the visitors is, first of all, just to remember Anne, her fate, what happened to her, the history of that she was part of. It's incredibly important to start with just taking in that history, and it will lead you hopefully to a reflection of why could this have happened. So what does it tell us? What does it tell us about ourselves, who we are, and who we want to be? And then finally, I hope that they will, when they go back to their communities, they will engage with their communities in order to make sure what happened to Anne will never happen again.
Thank you so much, Ronald Leopold. It's an honor to talk to you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the Anne Frank House and frankly, bringing it a little bit closer to home. I'm Abigail Pogrebin for In the Spotlight. Thank you all for being with me, and I'll see you next time.